Good morning and welcome to a Wednesday edition of Sunrise Extra. Who's playing today in Sunrise? Brenda. We have Rod. I phrased it like that, Rod, because quite honestly, I don't know why. I thought maybe you weren't in here today, but I'm glad you're on board, my friend.
Well, I'm just so gosh darn busy. You never know when I'm going to be here or not.
Exactly. I feel like we need a deep cleansing breath. We were talking earlier. I don't know why this week seems like it's never going to end.
Yeah.
Yesterday I was like, is it only Tuesday?
Yeah.
Today I'm like, is it only Wednesday?
Although it's only Wednesday does have a better feel to it than it's only Tuesday, right? I mean, Tuesday you're still like, you start the tightrope walk and you're not in the middle yet and you're thinking like maybe I should go back, but then you realize you can't go back. Wednesday, at least you know you're halfway there.
Absolutely. Slog on.
You can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Let's talk about our discussion this morning. I had to do the same thing you were doing a moment ago, turn down the volume on my phone. This is what we use, by the way, to check in with your comments on our daily topic. Today, if you're chimed in on Facebook, you can see the topic right there at the top of the screen. We talk about 80% of adults in the U.S. saying the pandemic is a significant source of stress right now in their lives. So we're asking you, day to day, in your own day to day, what stresses do you have that you can directly link to the COVID, to the pandemic? This is obviously something we've been dealing with since, in these parts, mid-March. We're now in month number 7, and I know for a lot of people, I'm grateful, Brenda, Rod, I know you are too, that we have this to come to every day, right?
Yeah.
We still have the job, and that never stopped. Thank you. Thank you. To me, I know that is the biggest concern and the biggest stressor for a lot of people because there are so many people still that are out of work right now.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Out of work and having trouble with their unemployment. And I mean, there's just a whole laundry list of things. So yeah, the situation is dire. In that same vein, I was looking at some of the statistics. You referenced a couple of them, but it says that Gen Z adults are the most likely to say that they're lonely. And then there was one that just jumped out at me. It blew my mind. It said more Americans are having thoughts of suicide. And then in September, it says more than half the kids ages 11 to 17 reported thinking frequently about suicide.
Half of what kids? Half of all the kids?
It says, this is all it says, in September, more than half of kids ages 11 to 17 reported thinking frequently of suicide.
What the heck? Rod, obviously
that's right?
that's our kids, Rod, right?
Well,
that's your daughter, my son's right in that age group.
One of those stats, I don't personally care who does the survey. I have a hard time believing that.
It seems way, way up.
Right.
Whether you believe that stat or not, I don't care if the stat read 22%.
Well, good point.
Of 11 to 17 year olds.
Or even 5%.
5%.
Yeah.
That is a huge issue, and I don't know if those numbers, how accurate they are, but the suicide rate we know amongst younger people has grown in recent years, and we can actually date it very close to the beginnings of what? Social media, right? I mean, it really has. We have seen a spike since the likes of Twitter and, if you want to go back a little further, MySpace, but Twitter, Facebook more recently, there has been a spike in young suicides. And that is, it's sad to think about that. I feel like at home, in some ways, we're even closer to our kids right now than we were a year ago because we're around them all the time, especially my wife. We've talked about this already. She is home with them almost day and night now as she works from home and they school from home. Yeah. And I feel like it has given her the opportunity to really keep a close eye on them, kind of know what they're up to. Yeah. That's been a positive in some ways in our house, but that just, that absolutely makes me sad, Brenda, to hear that stat, whether it's 100% accurate or close to it.
Yeah, and Drew, let me back up for a second. It's so important to be with your friends and being a kid when you're young, right? And for families that don't have activities that their kids are still able to do, I'm starting to think to myself how difficult that must be for those kids that really just have the fact that they're at home with their family and they have very little else outreach right now except for the classes online for school. Yeah.
Let's hear real quick from the president of Mental Health America. He's talking about anxiety and depression and the rates of that skyrocketing.
Repeat that for me again, Brenda.
America is definitely facing a mental health crisis as a result of the pandemic. We have seen an extraordinary number of people, hundreds of thousands, who have come to us at Mental Health America for help and support far over and above what we would have seen before the pandemic.
You know, I'm listening to that. I'm also watching our viewers' comments this morning. Virginia Carlson sort of cementing what we've already talked about, saying teens are very, in bold letters, very sad and very hopeless right now. She says, I've been doing a youth group for 6 years. She has 2 teens of her own. So Virginia, for one, definitely tied into that young group who she says very sad and very hopeless right now.
Yeah, Julie says, I stress out worrying about what is going to happen with the economy as this pandemic keeps on going and what that will mean for us financially. Of course, we've done the stories yesterday on the independent theaters, and today we pointed out that the bowling alleys are still not able to open, and how many people are without jobs because of that.
And Katie says working full-time from home with 4 kiddos doing virtual schooling has been stressful. Let's see.
I will say that, you know, again, I'm happy, like you said, Rod, that that our kids do have some avenues to get out of the house. I mean, they played what wound up being really a full season of youth baseball this year. It didn't really kick in till July, and normally it kicks in April. But they wound up playing all of July, all of August, and most of September and this month. There were some wildfire issues that really actually knocked out the September portion. But that, you know, has been a great avenue. That kept things normal for them. It was not normal to be playing baseball with masks on their face, which was the case this year, right? But that certainly was far better than being at home. Because home leads to what? They're in front of the computer or they're in front of the Xbox.
Yeah, lots
doing
of
that.
screen time. Absolutely. Shelley brings up a great point. She said, it's tough living in assisted living, watching the people I love and care about who can't see family, and very little accountability in long-term care facilities in her experience. So yeah, that would be really, really, really hard.
You know, that takes me back to those early days of the pandemic when we did a lot of stories on the seniors who were living in those care facilities that were separated from their loved ones, and in some cases we're talking about wives or husbands separated from their significant others, right? There was that story, do you remember that, like in the first few weeks of the pandemic, of that woman who came and sang happy birthday to her husband?
Oh, I know, that was
oh my gosh, yes.
So moving. So I'd also, as we continue to talk about the problem, I'm curious with you guys watching, what do you do to kind of nourish yourself and kind of get yourself in a more positive space? Because, you know, we all to different degrees get down, but what do you do, you know, to take care of yourself, to move forward, to kind of change the conversation if you can, kind of in your own head? Sometimes it's hard. Oftentimes, most times it's hard. Let's just be honest.
And I'm wondering, Katie, if you could tell us more. Katie says, oh, wait a minute, where's she at? Oh, yeah, Katie says, mental health issues with children are definitely up. It's shocking to witness it firsthand. And I don't know if there's anything else she feels comfortable sharing or not. She says she's been working full-time from home with 4 kiddos during virtual schooling. And, of course, a lot of people agree with Katie. That's very stressful. Yeah.
You know, the unknown is still out there. What we have not experienced yet is life during a pandemic in the winter months, right? This all changed for us in late February, early March, really the middle of March. So we're talking about spring, summer, fall. But really, and this is a point that's brought up by one of our viewers this morning who watches us regularly here on Sunrise Extra, Angela Barks-Draz. She says, we're going to struggle with exercise in the rainy season because she, for one, still not going to an indoor gym. And really, we all know, right, that there's no secret here that exercise is the great combator against depression and against being down. You know, exercise brings you up, and if people are doing less of that on top of having the added stresses, well, then, you know, that's a bad equation.
And then Christy Williamson, good morning to you, weighing in, saying kids see the way adults are being mean to each other. Instead of respecting that everybody has an opinion, they are hateful. What happened to kindness? Speaking of kindness, coming up on KGW, we have a TEDx Portland special, and it's about kindness and community. So we're looking back, there is the mayor of Anaheim, California, former mayor, who ran his political campaign on kindness, and it really worked. He made a lot of changes and brought the community of Anaheim, California together, and so he's going to be one of the speakers this year. Also, some of our past TEDx Portland speakers who hone in on community and kindness, that's coming up later this week. So.
You asked something of our viewers, Brenda, and they have responded. You asked,
good.
what have they done to combat the stresses that come with the COVID situation? Angela chiming back in saying she does a little yoga. She also does some quilting, and she says she's started doing Tunisian crochet, a new skill for her.
Tunisian crochet. I'm going to have to Google that.
Touche.
Yeah.
You could Google it, or Angela could hop back on the stream and explain what the heck Tunisian crochet is all about.
I like that.
Christina Greer says music is her remedy. She says she turns on coffee shop music to remind her of what it was like to sit at that little coffee shop down the street from her. She says she also lives in a pretty busy street where she gets to watch traffic and do some people watching.
I like that.
Did you read Shane's comment? I'm just now seeing this one. He says, not only is it hard to deal with anxiety and depression for a lot of kids right now, but their stress could lead them to become careless with social distancing and mask wearing. We need to continue to reach out and have the difficult conversations about our feelings. I think that's really important, Shane. That's an awesome point, because especially when it comes to suicide, sometimes we tiptoe around the subject with people who may be vulnerable because you're just like, I don't want to bring it up because I don't want to put that thought in their head. That thought's already in their head. And sometimes what we need to do is to listen and to address it instead of hoping that it will go away if we don't mention it. So yeah, it is hard to talk about, but it's super important.
Yeah. You know, I always feel for those families. That we just had a story in the news, whether we covered it or not, but I know a local young woman, 13 years of age, like a star soccer player in her community, who committed suicide. And, you know, you always hear about these like, wow, like that's not the child you expect to hear about in a situation like that. You know, good student, active in her community, playing sports, had friends. You know, I don't know her whole backstory, her whole life story, but on the surface, it sounds like she had a good life at 13. And then the parents say, you know, they're out coming out and speaking to try to prevent this from happening to other families, saying some of the same things. But you wonder, you know, was that discussion ever had in that house? And I'm not judging, blaming, or anything, so don't take this as that. But you're right, Brenda, in that maybe you think, well, we don't need to talk about suicide because it's not really an issue in our house. I will say that that amazing wife of mine, who we've talked about before on Sunrise Extra, Mia, has talked about this with our boys. And at first, you know, when this first came up a few years ago, I'm like, what is she doing? Why is she even bringing this up? You know, why are we talking about suicide in front of our young guys? That's me, you know, being narrow-minded and not wanting to talk about those dark things that no one really wants to talk about. But she would bring it up, and I think at least for our kids, they know it's real. They know their mom is concerned about it. They now know they can talk to their mom, and hopefully they can talk to me.
Yep.
They know they can talk to her about it because the conversation has already started.
No, absolutely. You know, when you know better, you do better. I don't even think of it as narrow-minded. It's literally just kind of expanding the way you do things, you know, and that will continue as your boys get older. I mean, I learned a ton between the time that my kids were born and the time that they, you know, left the house and went out on their own. I mean, it just, sometimes I think raising kids teaches the parents more than it does the kids.
I am narrow-minded, though, Brenda. You have to let me have that. And what we're trying to do is expand my mind, Brenda.
All right.
We're trying to get in there and expand the narrow mind that rests inside of my head.
Give me the jaws of life. No, just kidding.
Let's see. Anders Green says, my kiddos are running, playing, reading, and doing other activities, which is great.
Yeah.
Mary Tran says, my dogs became overweight due to COVID. Oh, they're just laying around the house with the rest of us. Linda Hamilton says she joined a gym. She takes aqua aerobics, started sewing, and doing Go Noodle exercises with my grandson on YouTube. What's Go Noodle exercises? I don't know that.
See, Linda says their grandson is living with her and her daughter, and being an only child is especially hard, and we're trying to find outside activities for him, but with the change of season, it's really tough. Yeah, I think, you know, it's going to be interesting because this hit in the bright daylight hours of spring for us. Right. And we do stories on seasonal depression and what I call the dark season or the winter season because of the limited daylight.
Right.
And we're looking at changing the clocks that first Sunday in November, and all of a sudden it'll be dark at about 4:30 in the afternoon. And let's hope that, these depression issues don't get worse.
You know, sometimes I think, you know, and I've said this to, you know, family members and people that I know who struggle. Sometimes I know you don't feel like it, and that That's what makes depression so hard, is like the things that will make you feel better you don't feel like doing. But helping somebody else, kind of getting out of your own head when you can. And Brenna Rojas has a great comment on the stream. She says, going to stay busy with cleanup after the Beachy Creek fire 2020. Lots of work to do. Come help. Share skill and kindness. The Canyon needs it right now. And then hashtag Detroit, Oregon. So that's another thing, you know, if you're able to give to somebody else, kind of pay it forward, that definitely makes you feel good.
Yeah.
It's always tough to do. You know, it's tough to talk about the things that are difficult, Brenda, like you said. It's tough to do the things that are sometimes difficult. I mean, that's, to me, and I don't know, I guess there are some people who are wired differently, but to me, that's why exercise has always been difficult, because it's not the first thing I want to do.
Right.
My inclination is to relax. It's not to get up and move around and exercise when I'm done work, for example, but you're right. Sometimes we have to do the things we don't want to do to better ourselves, physically, mentally, what have you. Joshua Madrid chiming in, and this is a gentleman who often chimes in on Sunrise Extra. I know just from your past responses, Joshua, that you're a bartender in the area, and he says even though he's back to work, it's difficult being happy about it, as a lot of his friends are still jobless because of the hospitality and entertainment industries slowly crumbling before our eyes. He says he's thankful to be back at work, but he also calls it bittersweet, which reminds me of something that I ran into this week, Brenda and Rod.
What's that?
We're putting together a story about haunted places in Portland, kind of like your typical Halloween week story on the Sunrise Show, but we hope to make it interesting with some historical perspectives. So anyway, it's going to air next week. We're going out to shoot it today. We called on 3 places that were sort of top of mind of this historian we're working with in terms of their legendary haunts. Kells, Old Town Pizza, and the White Eagle Saloon there in North Portland. And unfortunately, Kells downtown closed right now. Old Town Pizza in Old Town closed right now. The White Eagle is still open. We're going to go to all 3, and the good news for Kells is they do have that second location on Northwest 21st. They're kind of channeling all business there, but that historic downtown spot, not up and running. And Old Town Pizza, thankfully, does have another operation in Northeast on MLK. So they have that second fallback location, but, you know, their flagship, the Old Town location of Old Town Pizza, not able to open.
I didn't know that, because I've been going to Old Town Pizza since I was like in college at U of P,
yes,
that it had a haunted past.
They the building that Old Town Pizza sits in Old Town is right above the underground tunnels.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, interesting. Beth Ann says calling friends regularly. I've talked with some long distance friends I haven't talked with in several years, which has been really nice. And then she says, I think Go Noodle is a site some teachers use for doing a quick physical activity with kids. That makes sense.
That is true. Just talking in May, around May, I called my best man. He was the best man at my wedding, Mike Simpson. Maybe not watching right now. I'll say good morning to him anyways. And I just, you know, I've kind of don't stay in touch with Mike as I used to. He's doing this, I'm doing that. You know, he lives way out in Hillsborough. way out there in Hillsborough, Washington County. But, you know, it does stink how you sort of lose track. So I call him in May, we connect, and it's like awesome, right? It's this great conversation. 2 guys on the phone just doing what they used to do and making each other laugh. And I hung up thinking, man, like I feel better. I think I was a little down that day. I feel better. From now on, I'm calling Mike every week. I haven't called Mike since then.
I know, but it's true.
What the heck?
Because you've known him for a long time,
Yes.
and I have friends like that. I mean, some of the, you know, the gals that I grew up with, I think we've known each other since we were 11. And it doesn't matter how long we haven't spoken to each other, as soon as we get back on the phone or see each other, it's like the laughter comes. And you're right, you do feel better because they know you like nobody else.
And I felt great. I was ready to run through a brick wall after talking to Mike. So I'm going to call him every week. I couldn't keep my own word to myself.
Crystal Watts says, write a list of 10 to 20 things to be thankful for every day. Do you guys journal? I think about journaling. I've got like 10 journals, barely filled. Every once in a while I'll get on a jag, but I never complete it. I think it's a good thing to do.
I'm supposed to be journaling right now. I started a little program where I'm supposed to be journaling.
Really?
Yeah, I haven't kept
You
up with the
didn't tell us that.
No.
A little program.
I'm talking to somebody these days, talking to him once a week about stuff in my head.
That's good.
Yeah, sometimes it is.
No, that's always good.
Yeah,
I
no,
like
it is.
that. I didn't know that.
I like that conversation too every Tuesday. I was like, oh, I got to do that call now. It's 2:30 on Tuesday. I got to make that call, darn it. And then after the call, I'm like, oh, I'm glad I made that call.
See, that's so good. I mean, I don't know. I've been in therapy before. I spent about a year in therapy, and I remember looking at the therapist. So I had never been in therapy before for anything, and I was like, I enjoyed the man. We were chatting, and then I remember, it's so funny. This is just the way I'm wired. I walked out of his office, but before I left, I turned. He was sitting down at his desk, and I said, "So is this it? We just talk, and then after a while, it gets better." And he laughed, and he goes, "Yeah, that's kind of it." And within a year, I'm like, "Yeah, I think I'm good." But it definitely helps.
Well,
I'm proud of you, Carney.
It's in 2020, Brenda. We do it by way of computer screens, so it's a little different.
Yep.
In some ways, better, more convenient, right? You can do it right from your home.
Yep. However,
but sometimes I'm lost in my thoughts there too during the call. I'm thinking, I wonder if I could do this person's job.
You're trying to second guess your
I don't know what she's saying to me right now. It's probably helpful, but all I'm wondering is, could I do this for a living?
Yeah, you could do it.
Totally.
That
would be a mind exploder.
Yeah. You could
coming
do it,
in, Dr. Carney.
And I always like to begin those calls by saying nothing, just sitting there like, why should I talk first? Why do I have to go? You tell me something. You knew I
I'm paying
you knew I had a 2:30. What do you got for me? So what's going on?
Oh my gosh. Oh, so really quick, Nancy says, I paint every day. That's good.
Yeah.
That I would like to do. I am artistic. I haven't done that in a long time. In college, I used to draw. Somebody, come on. It's going fast and furious. What's our last
Addison
comment?
says, taking my work phone calls on my earbuds while I'm going for a walk. Kind of helps me get my daily exercise in. Good idea. Multitasking. I can't do that myself, but I admire people who can.
So Nancy has a health journal. That makes sense.
Yeah. That's good. Journals are good. It's good to write things down.
Oh, I
Just
need to
because it's
start
good, though, doesn't mean I do it. Should be doing it. Did you read Crystal Watt's comment? This is not a bad one to end on, because I think about this a lot. Call someone different every day. Tell them that you appreciate them, and what you tell them that you appreciate them, and what exactly you appreciate about them.
I like that.
I always say I'm going to call my sister once a week, and I always feel like, I'm just going to call and say, hey, thinking about you, love you, and that'll be nice. And then I don't do it.
You can text her.
Yeah, I have done that too. But no, you're right. Why not just do it every day? Just text, hi. Because I'm afraid, honestly, you know what, selfishly, I'm afraid that I know I've got stuff to do, and if she calls me and we get to talking, I won't be able to get done with the thing that I'm supposed to get done.
I know, but at the end of your life, you're never going to think about all those little chores that you had. You're going to think about the connections that you have with your family and your friends, right?
If we know we're going to think about that at the end of our lives, why don't we just take care of it right now?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I know, but we always say that.
That's what I'm saying. Well, I appreciate about you two, let me think, laughter. Drew and Rod, both of you, every day I could not be more grateful to work with you and to have fun with you and to talk with you and to see, especially Drew, as frenetic as you can be, there is a heart of gold in there, a soft little mushy heart, and I value you. So that's what I'm grateful for.
Thank you. It is actually a benefit, Rod and Brenda, to work with people you like.
Right.
And we can include Nina in that bunch too.
Absolutely.
But because I know in some newsrooms they're like, I cannot stand working with so-and-so, or he or she drives me nuts every day. Like, we don't have that, and that's cool.
Yeah.
Bravo.
Very cool.
On that note,
we say goodbye.
I think we should.
All right, this is a hotline that you can use if you're having suicidal thoughts or you know someone who could use help. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, available 24 hours every day, 1-800-273-8255.
Take care.